Take a look at this chart of Ontario hospital beds over the last 35 years. In 1990, Ontario had 4.8 hospital beds per 1,000 people. Today, we're merely at 2.2 beds. So, how are patients being treated? Well, simply put, they're not. Not in time, anyway. Ontario's hospitals are facing a major capacity shortfall, and there aren't enough hospital beds for the patients who need them, causing long delays in treatment. This might be old news for many people, but how exactly did we get here? Let's start with a little history. Over the past 30 years, successive governments have gutted Ontario's hospital capacity. Ontario has the least number of hospital beds across Canada. Canada itself compares poorly with other developed economies. It's the main reason why we have overcrowding in hospitals, as there are not enough beds to accommodate the patients who need them. And as Ontario's successive governments have reduced capacity, it's led to a culture whereby hospitals discharge patients prematurely, releasing them quicker and sicker back into the community. But not only is that unfair to patients who are discharged to make room for other people who need care, these patients return to hospitals because they have not received the care they need to fully recover. And yet, we still have overcrowded hospitals due to a failure in planning for a growing and aging population. This capacity crisis is also contributing to a massive surgical backlog. In 2021, about 8,000 people in Ontario died, waiting for surgeries, MRIs, and CT scans. Currently, there are about 107,000 patients waiting longer than the maximum clinical guidelines for their surgeries, an all-time high. Ontario's refusal to invest sufficiently in hospital capacity hurts everyone, but it's disproportionately harmful to the elderly. Nearly 60% of hospital services in Ontario are used by people aged 65 and over. So, it's the population of seniors who bear the brunt of this policy to limit capacity. It's predominantly the elderly, who are stuck in ambulances for hours because paramedics cannot transfer them to hospitals as there's no space for them. And when a bed does become available, it's often in an unconventional space, like a lounge, an operating room, or a hallway, because hospital wards just don't have space. For years now, many of Ontario's hospitals have operated at over 100% capacity, even going as high as 146%. And that brings us to Hallway Healthcare and Doug Ford. Ford did not make many concrete promises when he was running in 2018. What he did promise was to end Hallway Healthcare within 1 year. 1 year, because Ford thinks that a shortfall accumulated over 2 decades can be fixed within 12 months. But not only did Ford fail to fix hospital overcrowding, or so-called hallway healthcare, he made it worse by refusing to take the steps that were needed. Instead of making investments, Ford made real dollar cuts to hospitals soon after he came to power. So, where are we now? Well, hallway healthcare was bad enough in 2018. Now it's 30% worse than when Ford first got elected, meaning that every day, about 1,374 patients are being treated in lounges, in hallways, in storage closets, because there is no capacity. Unfortunately, it's getting worse. The Ontario government's population projections show that over the next 10 years, our population will grow 1.5% annually. But the population of people over 65 will grow at double that rate, at about 3%. The oldest parts of the 65-plus age group are projected to grow the fastest, and they are the ones who desperately need hospitals the most. So what is the government's plan? Well, it's quite ugly. We recently crunched the numbers and estimated that Ontario needs about 8,000 beds over the next 4 years alone to provide appropriate care to people and get our hospitals back to an acceptable standard. But based on the government's plan, we will only see an increase of 1,000 beds in that time period. In response to our recent research report on this issue, the government admitted that over the next 10 years, they will only add 3,000 beds. That falls way short of what is required. Plus, beds must be staffed. Hospitals can't simply open up new wings without having the staff to care for patients. But the Ford government has failed to develop a staffing plan. Based on this government's current trajectory, the quality of care in our hospitals will get worse, service levels will decline, and people will suffer. Some, inevitably, will die on wait lists. Yes, it's shocking, but we can't simply despair. We need to be vocal about this crisis. Call and write to the Premier and the Health Minister and your MPP. They need to know that the public is acutely aware about the fact that they are not meaningfully addressing the hospital capacity issue. Talk to your friends, talk to your coworkers and family members, and talk to people in your community and encourage them to advocate on this issue. Let's not let the government get away with failure. Let's compel them to address this crisis.